So today, I'm here in my red flannel, because today we're here to talk about some lumberjack shit. So in previous videos, I've discussed belt knives and things that various individuals might carry for knives, and I figured I'd switch it up a bit today and discuss some axes. Axes are by far one of my favorite tools. They're also one of my favorite things to throw. I've thrown knives, I've thrown axes. They're both very fun, but I started with axe throwing, and it is very fun. If you haven't been axe throwing, there are indoor ranges popping up all over North America. I'd really recommend going. You go to the right one with good reviews, you'll get a good coach. I'll teach you how to get some axes sticking in targets real fast. You will not be disappointed. Do yourself a favor, give it a try. So, I got 3 axes I want to talk about today. The first of which is your simple hatchet. I'm not going to go into too much detail with this because anyone who's been camping, anyone who's split wood before in their life is probably familiar with a hatchet. It's everywhere. You could pick one of these up for 20 bucks at your local hardware store. There's not a whole lot to talk about, but what I do want to talk about specifically is handle shape and indexing. I've discussed this point about knives, and I cannot stress it enough. Indexing is so important when it comes to tool selection and purpose of your tool selection and what you intend to use the tool for. So, an axe like this, a hatchet, most of them all have this sort of handle shape. You have a nice curve here, fits your hand very well, with this little jut out here that helps to keep the axe from sliding out of your hand when you're swinging it, which is ideal. You don't want this to leave your hand when you're trying to split some wood. That would not be very good. So that's what this was designed for. Hatchets like this, which are shorter, will also typically have a sort of curve here. That's to allow for more leverage on this head, because in the end, all an axe is a wedge on a lever, and when you have a lever that has its length reduced, you can alter that leverage and maybe get a little bit more bang for your buck by adding different symmetry here. And that's what this is meant to do. It just increases leverage for compensate for the shortness of it. On a longer handle, on a maul or a splitting axe, you'll notice it doesn't always have such a curve here. It'll typically be straighter because you don't need the curve when you have the length. Now, aside from that, this is a really simple tool. It's got a 2-pound head. It's real thick. It's meant for splitting. You got a surface on the back here that you could use as a hammer face if you needed to, but the handle isn't really designed for that. It's not ergonomic. You're not supposed to swing it like this. You could jar your wrist and hurt your hand doing that. It's meant to be held like this. So I wouldn't recommend using that as a hammer face. I wouldn't even consider that as a hammer face unless you absolutely had to, because again, you could hurt your hand. This hatchet is well loved. I've used it out camping, and I've also thrown it. Despite its handle shape, if you develop a throw around it, you can throw these. Many axe throwing places and indoor ranges, I should say, will have axes like these because they're cheap. And given that the axes get broken while throwing all the time, it's often best to go with the cheap option. So the key thing being, you just need to make sure you can sort of open your hand on the release so that this doesn't get caught and mess up your rotation. But I digress, I'm getting off track here. That's a hatchet. The next axe I want to look at is a tomahawk. Now, anyone who's played Call of Duty or watched movie or media like The Patriot has heard the term tomahawk. It's a fairly common term in pop culture nowadays, especially regarding weapons. Some of you who are familiar with the tomahawk probably know exactly what I'm talking about. There's some of you who might not know exactly the difference between a hatchet and a tomahawk, and that's kind of what I wanted to discuss here. I have a tomahawk right here. This is the Cold Steel Frontier Hawk. I've had this tomahawk for 3 years. It's well loved. It's beaten up a bit, and it needs some work. So you'll notice the head here is no longer pressure fit. On a wood handle like this, you can sand it correctly, and you can slam the head on, and it will pressure fit without a set screw. But over time, shrinkage, warpage, and even rotting with a wooden handle can cause the fit to deteriorate a little bit. This is American hickory, so actual rotting isn't something I usually worry about. It's a very solid wood, and it's pressure treated, I believe, so it's not going to rot. But from where it is just, I need to take some sandpaper and resand this and refit it. But I digress once again. To get back to the fundamentals of this axe, the main difference being the handle. It's the biggest difference, simply being because the head is still an axe head. It's still a wedge. It is a different shape, and we'll get into that in a minute. But in the end of the day, it splits wood just like hash does. The handle can really alter its possible functions. This handle is a lot longer, so you have some extra leverage here. However, there are some downfalls in the fact that it is not ergonomically shaped to stay in your hand at all times. This axe can come out of your hand when you're swinging it, so be aware of that if you're using it to chop wood. It can come out very easily, especially if your hand gets sweaty and you have no leather wrap or anything down here to help with that. It can come out of your hand real easy because it's just straight and it's the same shape all the way down. However, where that may not be the best for splitting large pieces of wood, that does make it a prime candidate for throwing. And that is where we see it used in media the most, is throwing. You know, you insert action movie character here, throwing the tomahawk like a badass, right? Everyone has seen a scene like that, or most people have. Anyone who's seen an 80s action movie has probably seen a scene like that. And truthfully, I'm sure while actors make it look easy, it's not make it look real easy, and you might think it's hard. With a shape like this, it's not as hard as you think. All you have to do, if you are using this in a competition or at an axe throwing range, all you have to do is keep your wrist, and you keep your wrist and your arm straight up, straight down, and you just loosen your grip a little bit, and it will slide right out and continue on its little merry little way. With this, you might have to kind of flick your wrist or find some way to open your grip without interfering in the throw of the axe, and that limits it. And that is why Native Americans, as well as pioneers, carried these, because while they may not be as good for splitting, they are great for hunting purposes. You could take a small rabbit or small game with these. They have good range to them. The length of the handle gives them good range when you're throwing them. And they're also easy to pack with you. These are a good personal axe to carry. Any hiker or camper, I suggest, should carry an axe of whatever kind they can get a hold of. If you're not out there often, then one of these will do just fine. But if you spend a lot of time moving, especially if you're not one of those people that likes to just pick a spot and camp out, if you like to hike, hikers especially, backpackers, you don't want to carry something like this, because the name of the game in those kind of environments is weight reduction. You don't want to be carrying this because this is 2, 3, maybe even 4 pounds, and it can be heavy, especially if it's on your belt. It will, you will feel the fatigue of having that there if you're climbing up a mountain. I guarantee it. Not as fun. This might weigh a combined 2 pounds. Very light. Of course, all that weight reduction coming from the lack of metal in comparison, right? It tapers down to an almost knife blade here, whereas this does not taper down nearly as much. Makes it far easier to carry, though. And still, even though the blade isn't quite as thick as that blade, it still has more versatility than a sheath knife would, for sure. The leverage makes all the difference. But you know what would be the best? If you took these two and mashed them together and came up with something that had advantages from both. Introducing this. So, I'm just going to set this up here and show you a nice little side-by-side for those of you who might have missed it. But you can see that this is a very clear mix of both of these concept ideas. And And this design was created almost 200 years ago, I believe, in the 1800s. At least that's when it was patented. This design may have been blacksmithed and made a lot beforehand, but it was patented in the 1800s by a Canadian after my own heart, who designed this to be a lovely combination of those sort of two axes. They designed this axe head design. And it was named after the region in which it was used and patented in, and that is the Hudson Bay. This is the Hudson Bay pattern axe. That is the name and design of this axe. And this axe is one of my favorites because it is just so damn versatile. I haven't even gotten to use it that much, but I already love it because of everything it offers. It is thicker. There's a lot more metal. The camera's not showing it too well. Let me just, there, that's a bit better. There's a lot more metal in this axe in general, and therefore a little bit more weight. But still, less weight than this beast. This would still be far easier to carry on your belt up a mountain than this. This would also split larger pieces of wood a lot easier than this would. And it still has enough thinness in the blade to be able to be used for fine shaping and whittling. I could use this to easily shave down spearheads or something of that nature if I needed to, with ease. And one of the unique features about this is it has a machined face here, a hammer face. And unlike the back of your old hatchet, holding this in a sort of reversed grip makes no damn difference to the user because the handle is shaped the same way, just like the other one is. Sure, again, you have less grip. There is that downfall, but I think this is a more viable hammer face to use by far, because you're not going to shock your wrist. You're not going to hurt yourself too much by swinging this. And the added length makes for more leverage and a better swing whether you're using the hammer or the axe face. This is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, cold steel product I bought. I'm geeking out a little bit here, but it's just such a nice axe. And this one is just an awesome specimen. The hickory handles that Cold Steel uses is completely random. You know, they're just hickory cut and shaped, right? And so you never know what you're gonna get. This one that I got is a nice hickory. It's a nice tan shape, and while you can't see it anymore, I burned tiger striping down the back edge of it, and it looked really sick at one point. It is, again, well loved, so you can't really see that anymore. I'll have to redo it someday, but this I probably won't do anything to, because this has a natural shade divide in it. It came this way, and I just adore that about it. It looks so cool. At most, what I reckon I will do is probably sand some of this baked coating off if I can. This is a sturdy coating. I hope I can. Get some of that coating off, and I will probably put some leather grips to make using it for chopping a bit more practical. Because in truth, I'm probably not going to use this for throwing and for competitions. While I could, it just seems far more practical as a bushcraft tool. You know, the weight of the head make it a little lopsided to throw. Still easier to throw than a hatchet, in my humble opinion, but just a little too lopsided to use in a competition. I would want to pick an axe specifically designed for that. This is just my bushcraft pack axe, and it is one of my favorite blend of ideas I've ever come across. So yeah, those are my three most well-loved axes. They've all seen a lot of, well, this one hasn't, but it will. The other two have seen a lot of love and a lot of use, and I'm really looking forward to wearing this one in too. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in and watching this video. If you guys like this kind of content, feel free to drop a like and subscribe and hit that bell notification. If you guys want to see some more humorous videos or little short comedic blurbs and such, maybe something a little less informal, feel free to follow me on my Instagram and TikTok. I go under the name Buddy Blades. I will put a link in the description below. And if you guys want to see me talk more about axes specifically, maybe you want to see me go into the other larger axes, mauls and splitting axes, I would love to do some videos on those. I have those in my collection. I just need to go fetch them from my shed. I just wanted to start with the basics I carry on my person. If you guys want to see that, feel free to leave a comment. Have a good day.